am so grateful that everyone is here. Thank you so much for opening up WonderCon. This is the first panel of the day. I believe so, so woohoo! You guys are so exciting. When I do my panels, I'm always curious, who is the first time going to a con? Yay, welcome! Welcome to your community. We're gonna bother you. Yay! Who's the first time to see one of my panels? Yay! Welcome, guys. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that you're here. My name is Lorine Garrison. I'm a school psychologist here in California. I've had the privilege for giving presentations at WonderCon and San Diego Comic-Con now for, oh my gosh, 2017, let me do math, 8 years now. So I really, really appreciate everyone coming out and supporting what we talk about. We couldn't do this without you because we love integrating comic books, pop culture into the learning environment, especially helping children, kids, young adults, neurodivergent folks, LGBTQIA, and the people who consider themselves within the area of Black, Indigenous, people of color. Once again, this panel is called Beastly Power, Science, Magic, and Mythology. We will take you down a windy, twisty road of why we care about beasts so much in animals. Yes, I'm one of those people that scroll on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok of all the little animals, but why do we humanize them, and why do we relate to them so much? So before we get started, I want to acknowledge not only WonderCon and thanking them and San Diego Comic-Con for always allowing us to come here and speak, but I also want to give some land acknowledgement to the Tongva people here, the Chumash, whose land that we are on. So if anyone is interested, please look up the hashtag Honor Native Land on any of the social media, then you'll be able to find out what land you are on. Once again, we are Beastly Powers. We're exploring science, we're exploring magic, we're exploring mythology and comics and pop culture. I would like to have everyone introduce themselves, why you're here, what brought you here, and anything you want to tell us about yourself. So let's start with John Jennings. I'm going to give a little introduction to you, just a tiny, tiny bit. Eisner Award winner, author, illustrator, professor, and what else would you like to tell the audience about you?
I'm also a publisher and ventriloquist.
Oh, okay.
That seems hard. Anyway, good morning.
No, afternoon.
Sorry, no, it's morning somewhere. Yeah, my name is John Jennings. So happy to be here on this wonderful panel, and very excited about stories. I always have been. Right now, I'm a professor of media and cultural studies. Teach courses of Afrofuturism, race and horror, comics. One thing I'm really excited about is that our new adaptation of Octavia Butler's Parable of the Talents comes out on April 22nd. So I'm excited about that.
Yay!
Thank you for having me, seriously. So, yeah.
Yay! Yay!
And I'm a writer and mixed media artist. I'm a mother of 3 and happily married. So I came here because I was invited by Lynn because I have a short story in a recent publication that's a Filipino Gothic horror. So we're exploring that today.
Actually, we're going to be releasing the preview tomorrow at Small Press Booth 66, so come on down and see us and get the preview of the book. So yes.
Yes. So that's my field of specialty at the moment.
Yay!
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. My name is Lynn Anderson. I'm a columnist and contributor at Fangoria, and a genre expert. I specialize in horror and gothic and monsters in particular, and even horror in particular, devouring monsters, which is very much the subject at hand here. You can definitely check out my work on Fangoria and on hiatus there. My column is called Eden Alive.
beastly powers. So.
Hi, go ahead. I'm just gonna do this.
Hi everyone,
okay.
I'm Lynn.
Thanks.
I do a lot of things, but I am a Filipino shaman. I'm also the founder and owner of Folklore and creator for Divina
Put that right there.
Comics, which will be present this weekend, so come check out our booth. And I'm also a community healer, facilitator, ritualist, and I'm very excited to have been invited by Lorine to speak to you on some of the subject matters that are very relevant within our culture and in practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. All right, so I'm going to ask the questions. My panelists were given these questions ahead of time, but they didn't know who I was putting in here. So let's talk about cultural and mythological representation. Okay, so we know that a lot of your works are based in mythology. You have a lot of cultural representation in what you've written about. So how do you adopt folklore, mythology in ways that are both respectful and relevant to modern audiences, especially to young readers? How do you ensure that these stories remain a source of empowerment rather than misrepresentation? So I know that we've taken a lot of our stories here that are shown here, and we've modernized them. So how do we have an accurate representation of maybe sometimes we don't even are born into or grown up into certain cultures, but we want to talk about them and represent them. I have tales of the Orishas here. So for example, John. I'm sorry?
I gotta start again.
Yeah, you got to start.
So I've always been a huge fan of different types of folklore from various people around the world. And from since I was a small child, and I don't know. I think as someone who's making this work or publishing the work, one of the things I want to do is make sure that, as you're stating, that the work is contextualized by the people that it's representing, you know? So, for instance, right now I'm working on a graphic novel that's set in the Sea Islands off in South Carolina, the Girlhood people.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm from Mississippi originally, so a lot of my, this southernness that I'm dealing with is very different than the southernness that's in South Carolina, right? So I actually reached out to a friend of mine who teaches in that area, and she connected me with amazing scholar, Dr. who's Gullah-Geechee. And so basically what I started doing was talking to her about what I was doing with that particular project. Now, and that's the process that I use. So as far as like Tales of the Orishas goes, I think it's the third representation of my imprint with Abrams Comic-Con. It's called Megascope, which is dealing with, science fiction, fantasy, horror from various backgrounds, right? And so this is by the great Hugo Canuto. You know anything about that particular space? There's a large concentration of black people in that particular Brazil, of course, and a lot of them are practitioners of contemplate. And contemplate, of course, is an African diasporic religion that is being demonized by a lot of the kind of radical Christian folk in Brazil.
Wow.
And he's actually a practitioner, the Bahia people. Right?
Oh.
So there's some of the most, there's a huge concentration of African indigenous people there, right? So contemplate is very similar to voodoo or Obia, different spaces throughout the diaspora. So he actually took it upon himself to create in sort of a way to resist that particular type of demonization. And we're talking really violent attacks against people who are practitioners with a comic book. So what he did is he took his love of fantasy and Jack Kirby, and he turned the Orisha into superhero. So basically, he is a practitioner of the religion. He also did a great deal of research on the different ways the religion is being practiced in Brazil. And when I saw it, I was like, this is amazing. So we actually had it, translated from Portuguese to English, and I put it out through Abrams Comic-Con. So the idea of authenticity and making sure we honor the original stories is extremely important to me.
And it sounds like you honor them as well. Is that correct?
Very much so.
Yeah,
Very much so.
you honor, you interview the people of that community.
we actually have some really, and most of the books we do have, essays that are done by scholars who are either connected to the culture in some way or experts doing research.
That's awesome. That's a great segue to Mary. Now, your short story that's coming out tomorrow is about the Manananggal, right? Did I say that correctly?
The Manananggal.
Manananggal, yes. Can you tell a little bit about your inspiration on that?
So, I am Filipino. I immigrated here when I was 15, and I had lived in the Philippines for about 6 years. Prior to that, I lived in Nigeria. So, stories of folklore have always permeated my childhood. The Manananggal is the most iconic Filipino monster. It's a woman, it's sort of take on a vampire. It's a woman who at night, her upper body separates from her lower body, and the upper body flies around with bat wings. It sprouts these massive bat wings, and it flies around in search of blood or human flesh. There's really not much source material surrounding any details or origins of the creature, which leaves a creative person some space to be able to, construct the creature in a way that suits the narrative. But as we said before, respect is also very important in how we present these creatures and these stories. So research is probably crucial to be able to round out these narratives with some respect. I mean, I feel that if I wanted to read a story about a Manananggal, I would really want someone to make it a bit more dimensional, or else it would just feel like tourism. You could just use it to say, spice the narrative, and use like stereotypical aspects of it. It wouldn't really give it the life that I would want. So yeah, but in this research, as you research these creatures, it's important to do so with intention and to sort of encapsulate them in a way that's probably relatable to the human experience. So in my case, my creature was set in a Spanish colonial city in the Philippines, and I created a character that is very uncomfortable with this symbiosis that she's trapped in. So she, in her human form, lives in a mansion that reflects her body. It's stone on the bottom and wood on top, which is typical of Spanish colonial homes in the Philippines. And then there are other things in the story that reflect that difficult duality. There's a guitar that's made out of two different woods that plays a crucial role in the story. And in a way, I wanted to show these tensions brought about by colonialism, but also brought about by frequent change that are things that we can relate to as part of the human experience. We all go through these tensions and dualities, and I wanted these characters and these creatures to exhibit that in a way that was digestible for every reader.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then, Leah, my question is for you. This is my favorite mythical and cultural representation, Topsy and what is the other one? Topsy and Bopsy, which is the caricatures of Black children that are right here at the top corner, and this is from Lovecraft Country. If you've seen it, it was on HBO and...
It started on HBO, it premiered on HBO, and then they canceled it, and I believe it's on Tubi for free now.
Yeah. So it's do you want to give your take on it?
So Topsy and Bopsy are really interesting figures. For one, this is probably like the most terrifying episode of the entire series.
Totally terrifying.
Because it's
Who's seen Lovecraft Country? Okay, you guys have to check it out. Yeah. So it's essentially, I don't know, it's based on the Black experience, I would say, of the 50s, a fictionalized...
it's based on a novel.
Yeah.
Do you remember the novelist's name?
Matt Ruff, R-U-F-F.
Yeah, so you can definitely that out. But yeah, it kind of, so H.P. Lovecraft was sort of notoriously horrendously racist.
I wouldn't say sort of. I would say definitely. Yeah.
Lovecraft Country offers kind of a corrective of that. So it takes like Lovecraftian monsters and resituates them as metaphors for encountering racism and oppression in like 50s Jim Crow America. So Topsy and Bopsy come out of, not folklore, but they come out of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. Did anyone read this in high school, middle school?
Okay.
So who remembers the part about Ava and Topsy, little Evangeline? I think she's referred to as little Ava. This is going back. This is going back to the mid-19th century. Yeah. Wow, that's really early for that.
Oh, yeah.
It's too early. What?
It's
really impressive. Okay, so the dynamic between Ava and Topsy is something that's really familiar, and you see it in contemporary tropes like the Black Best Friend, where the Black character is really just there to highlight the like angelic, pure, pious nature of the white girl. So Topsy is repeatedly described as like devilish, and she's bad. She's the bad, so Ava's good. And the point, the sort of Abraham Lincoln credited Harriet Beecher Stowe with starting the Civil War after releasing Uncle Tom's Cabin, because the point of the novel was to re-narrate relationships between white and black folks that weren't rooted in hatred, but rooted in like a paternalistic benevolence. So the story arc between Ava and Topsy is all about like Topsy essentially sacrificing herself to save Ava and like being brought to goodness by Ava's goodness, but she herself is not really like a fully formed character. So in Lovecraft Country, they take Topsy and they turn her into this sort of monstrous double to narrate the ways that black girls and black women are demonized and vilified by society as a result of these sort of like prejudicial ideas. So thinking about like the Black Best Friend, whose only function in the narration is to like support the character development of the white girl, or alternatively the like villainous aspect of that, where she's a foe, she's an enemy, and needs to be like sort of like vanquished by the narrative in order for the white character to like earn redemption. In Topsy and Bopsy sort of encapsulate the projection of that onto black girls as they're growing up. And so you meet the character Diana in the context of the story. She's best friends with Emmett Till, so we meet her at Emmett Till's funeral, and she's grieving, she's angry, and she's upset, and she's confused, and that is not perceived as human. So she's punished for these like human feelings, these very natural human feelings. And out of that punishment is birthed Topsy and Bopsy, and they're kind of like her monstrous counterparts. So the same way that dualism is set up between Topsy and Ava in Stowe's book, Topsy and Bopsy are like the villains to Diana, and they chase her throughout the episode. She's trying to not become them. And because if because then you become the angry black woman or angry black girl. And so it's really highlighting the kind of, the kind of trap that we find ourselves in as a result of prejudicial bias and racism.
Thank you.
In America. God, I hope I answered that.
Yes. I mean, you covered. I mean, and that's what it is. They're racist caricatures and dehumanization. Perfect. Yes. And it's the trauma, the internalized fear. There have been recent studies now about how Black girls and women are expected to behave more mature at a younger age than any of the other counterparts, Latina women, white women, Asian women. And so this is an acknowledgement of that, which I don't think a lot of people always get and understand when they're looking at it. And it also represents, right, the horror of the systemic racism, right? Very much so. So there's that fear. And this is what we love about the new and more modern books and pop culture that is out there, because it's empowering those who haven't had the voices before. And you know, like Alex or Lynn, what are your thoughts, and who are some of your favorite characters that have been empowering throughout the years and the cultures that you know?
Spider-Man, one of the reasons that I eventually have found him such an interesting motivational character is that he is someone who endures countless struggles, everyday struggles, regular struggles, that we can identify with. I love Superman, I love the Justice League, but I don't quite have a lot of the same concerns as all the billionaire playboy philanthropist superheroes, but Spider-Man has got a lot of everyday concerns that make him extremely relatable. He is somebody who sometimes he runs out of money. He's somebody who doesn't budget his time very well. He's somebody who's kind of perpetually running on fumes and running on guilty feelings for feeling like he's failed people in the past, and these are all very identifiable things. And to tie it back to what you were talking about with, you know, misrepresentation of African Americans in media, Spider-Man, even Peter Parker himself, is somebody who has more of a vivid representation of the ways in which African Americans have to be very particular in their interactions with police officers, because the police in New York are a very mixed bag in terms of how they interact with Spidey. Fortunately for him, he's got a spider sense, he's got spider powers, but he still has to be much more careful with them. So despite being a Caucasian male, he still has a sample of that experience that a lot of Black people unfortunately know all too well. But despite the fact that the odds are so stacked against him, despite the fact that a lot of New York doesn't always care for him, he still keeps on going. He still keeps trucking, and he still keeps trying to do the right thing, which I find tremendously fascinating as an audience member.
Right. Lynn, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love Spider-Man. I also love Poison Ivy. I love Poison Ivy. Any characters that are very, so going back to beasts and powers, in terms of inspiration, plants, animals, all that's being used throughout the world of comics and cartoons and animation. I don't know about any of you, but do y'all like dragons? I'm sure some of you have dragon lore in your culture, and you just don't know it, or you're aware of it, and you know, you're dragon fans, and I love how they hold all the elements of fire, water, earth, and air. I feel inspired by that in terms of like my creator capacity for, you know, I'm all anti-water comics. The Mythology is coming out at Comic-Con in San Diego this year, so if you're going there, please check out that our booth, yeah. And you know, and I also love characters like, if it's okay for me to say the Poison Ivy one, I want to allude back to the power of plants and the power of a woman, the sensuality of a woman, how plants are being perceived even in Instagram and social media
That is my next question. How do you think these stories help children and teens navigate their own identities, particularly those who might be neurodivergent, which means the word neurodivergent, if you're not aware of it, it's a way of explaining how people may not think neurotypically or the same or normalized. It started by a sociologist named Judy Singer in the 90s. That tried to describe the autistic experience. And so now the autistic experience of neurodivergency has expanded to those who might be ADHD or might, fall under the rainbow of the queer rainbow. So neurodivergency has now expanded to many, many different forms. So how do you think these stories help children and teens navigate their own identities? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, often the term masking gets used in reference to neurodivergent people. Masking
Yeah.
representing, sort of trying to suppress neurodivergent behavior in order to fit in with the neurotypical crowd. And again, to go back to Spider-Man, he literally masks his behavior constantly as Spider-Man. And I think that is part of what makes him relatable because there's such an inherent duality to him. Many superheroes have a duality, but Spider-Man is represented so literally that we see it on the page where he's, split down the middle and he's thinking the Peter Parker thing of, you know what, I'll let the police sirens go by. I don't have to go help those people. But then he's thinking the Spider-Man thing, I've really got to go do it. I would love to see Flash Thompson get a pie in the face or whatever, but I've got to go help the people. And so we see him sort of changing his behavior based on social situations and based on, whether he's got to jump into action and sort of mask that he's going to be Spider-Man or mask that he's Peter Parker, but we see him constantly shifting who he is relative to what the situation he's in.
Right, awesome.
To add to that, also, you always see him coming home very tired. Because it is exhausting to be masking all day.
Yeah.
I have a nephew who's autistic, and yes, it takes a lot out of him. So there are challenges with doing this. And it's inspiring to see that somebody on the page that goes through those struggles as well.
I have a few students that consider themselves furries, and so, it's been an interesting way to support them. So I am an affirming therapist, and so I like to figure out what does that mean for them? How does that relate to you? Sometimes it's just about finding community as well. And so now we have places like My Little Pony with Auntie Holiday, and I'm forgetting her partner's name, which is like one of the first, I think it might be the first lesbian couple in animation, I'm not sure, but so that was like very interesting. And we have the two symbols of one from DC and one from Marvel, right? We have Teen Titans Go, Beast Boy, and then we have Beast in Marvel. And so I find that, at least in my experience, children or even people relate to a lot of these characters because it empowers them. I think a few of us here are parents or have nieces or nephews or family. And what were you going to say, Leah? Yes?
Just jumping off of that, it's human beings have been telling stories about animals and about monstrous animals for our entire existence. But before the written word existed as a tool. This is hard, we are encoded to tell and be attracted to these stories. And there's this kind of paradoxical thing that happens, I think, with kids, where it's they almost, where these kinds of stories sort of, even though they're about animals and monsters being the other to human beings, that they become the place where we create ourselves. Because we define things, because we define what something is based on what it's not, animals kind of delineate the limits of our being. And so they can also kind of be portals of possibility to stretch that we kind of grow up out of into civilization and into all the rules and the structures of society that forces us to mask and to like expects us to be not necessarily truly who we are. And so there's freedom to be found in this kind of storytelling, both in like the time travel and escapist sense, and in like the possibilities for yourself.
Absolutely. Yes, John.
I'm going to say several things. I really wish I was in the audience.
You got questions for yourself?
The first thing I was thinking about was if you're coming from a different background that is not the dominant culture, then you do this thing called code switching, and where you basically speak to different demographics, according to your culture, right? It's like Kamala Harris did, right?
Right.
She's actually code switching according to where she was.
Right. Make up her mind.
The other thing, of course, is like stuff like intersectionality. It's actually the fluidity between like class and gender and all these different things of who we are from time to time. That's why I picked the chimera as my, I think it's a chimera.
No, these are dragons. The chimera is back here. We go back to the chimera. Sorry. Here's the chimera right up here.
It's okay. But the idea of like monsters that are made of different parts is something that's really interesting to me. And like Leah was stating, like we have been telling those types of stories for so long, And I just took a class called Media with the Monster that actually looked at like monstrosity and the different symbols as far as like what those different monsters can mean. And one of my favorite quotes that they tell us is by Colson Whitehead, and he says, "A monster is a person that has stopped pretending."
Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And
Well,
the other thing I was thinking about was how many people watch Sesame Street when they were.
yes.
So we got taught how to count by a vampire.
Right? 2, 3.
Yeah, monsters, that are around us all the time. Those are monsters, right? But they're monsters that are actually like interacting with us in a different way, and they're safe to us. I mean, one of my favorite books as a kid was Where the Wild Things Are. Right?
Yeah.
And I think it does teach us how to move through the fears of what it means to become grown, to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have representation of both the Eastern dragon, the Western dragon, and who plays D&D here? Yes, and so then you all know who Dragonborn is, right? Dragonborn are folks that, yeah, who on the panel? Do you know Dragonborn? Who?
Oh, no, I've heard of it.
Oh, okay, well, Alex, you want to talk about the Dragonborn? I don't have to explain it.
They're just a folk from D&D who are descended from dragons, and they look cool.
Well, Dragonborns are torn, right? They have that duality because they're part humanoid and they're also have the honor of the dragon, but they're like consumerists and they want to kill and eat and have gold and all of those things. So they struggle between those two. And so similarly with many of our folks, maybe some of the children that or, I got 15. We got so excited talking about things. So even with the duality of the Dragonborn, that's what we're talking about, code switching, we're talking about masking and things like that. Whether you're queer, neurodivergent, BIPOC, you've learned how to be able to go from one culture to another culture or mask those feelings when, like, if you're neurodivergent or you're autistic and you're overstimulated, and so sometimes you've got, like, right now I'm nervous and I have anxiety, so I'm holding onto this pen like Ronald Reagan or somebody did. Who did that? Who did that? Bob Dole, thank you. Exactly. So that is why we're up here and we're talking about this, because this is how we can create community, relate to one another. If you're a therapist or a budding therapist, this is why pop culture is so wonderful to use. Let's see. I've got three more questions. Well, okay. We'll hopefully go through the next two really quickly. So, what is this psychological appeal of these transformations? Now, this particularly is for Alex because, how is Peter Parker before he becomes Spider-Man, and then what happens to him afterwards?
Well, Peter Parker is described as a wallflower. He is somebody who desires and craves emboldened. He can suddenly be more of himself, despite the fact that he is, quite the nerd. He's also a sensation seeker. He likes adventure. He likes being Spider-Man. And also as Spider-Man, Peter Parker is this kid who grew up being bullied constantly, but then as Spider-Man, he's constantly dealing with bullies, and he can feel free to be as mouthy to them as he wants as Peter Parker. The things that he would normally think as Peter Parker, he can say those snide things, so it brings out a true sense of who he is in that regard.
Do you think Peter Parker could be Peter Parker without Spider-Man?
We've seen a lot of comics that have tried to explore that, and if we're talking a Peter Parker who's ever experienced being Spider-Man, I think that he struggles to give it up. Even if he loses the powers, he still wants to keep on trying because he's learned that's who he is.
Okay, so then if a person came to you and said, oh, I love Peter Parker, I love Spider-Man, but I could never be as heroic as Spider-Man, what would you tell them?
I mean, Miles Morales says it best in Spider-Verse. We're all Spider-Man. There's a Spider-Man in all of us. Like, the wonderful thing about this character is that the essence of him is somebody who is trying to do good in big and small ways. He's not just world-saving Spider-Man. He's not world's mightiest Spider-Man. He's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So we can all embody this superheroic character even by just doing very regular acts of altruism and kindness.
Awesome, thank you. I'll open up the floor for somebody else if anybody else wants to answer that question, or I can go to the next question. Yeah, all right, we're going to go to the next question. Yes.
Mary's story, I just want to go back to the Manananggal, the transformation. Is it okay if I ask you about that? Of course. I know you're pointing in on the because she has an amazing story. I heard it, and you must pick the story up. It's just so beautiful, so beautifully written. So can we just hear a little bit? Can we hear a little bit of your point of view of the transformation from who that character was? I know they don't know the story, but it's a woman who was born, right?
She's born into a wealthy Spanish family. Their wealth is built on the backs of the indigenous Filipinos. And her father has plans for her to marry her off into proper society. And there's this sort of monster within her that she's fighting against. And they know she transformed when she was about 14, which is around the time when puberty hits. And she becomes a representation of feminine rage and feminine confusion during this pivotal time of change. And they really are, the parents are struggling to find out, should we need to give her goat's blood. That's going to sustain her for a little bit. But then they realize that one day they give her a field hand, and she consumes him, and she stays with her longer. And so that's what causes them to set up residence in a major city where she can tempt more men to be able to consume. So it's just an interesting sort of exploration of feminine rage and how the attitudes towards women in certain societies.
It's so interesting. Every culture has a version of this story. Every single one. And it's usually, there's certain similarities of getting around puberty, and then that's when the monstrous shift happens. Right. Octavia Butler wrote, God is change. That is the only capital T truth of existence. We are all, us, everyone we know, everything alive is going to change and is also going to die, but death is also change. And there is an extraordinary freedom, an extraordinary wisdom in accepting that rather than resisting and fighting against it.
Absolutely, and those are some of the things I struggle with when I tell my students. My students are so afraid of change and what happened during COVID. I still have a lot of kids that I work with that struggle with the change that happened during COVID and then coming out of COVID, but change is necessary, absolutely. So, speaking of change, so how do you tell folks, or how do you explain the balancing that instinct and that control? So we were talking about like how some of the monstrousness that we all have inside of us is within who we are as human beings, because we are monsters in some way. So, for example, the Tales from Midnight, the book that is coming out, we have that preview. I have a book out now about a kid named Bob whose brain jumps out of his head one day after taking a really hard test, and his brain is just brain, and his experience of what seems like to be ADHD is what this brain experiences. And I have a lot of students that I work with who feel so out of control sometimes. And for example, in Bones and All, right? Tell us a little bit about the movie. I haven't watched the movie, but tell us about the parenting and about how she have chosen family, for example, those types of things.
So Bones and All is a like road trip coming of age story that centers two cannibals in love. It's incredibly romantic.
Timothy Chalamet is in this, and I never heard of this.
I mean,
Because it's a condition, right? They're not just cannibals for funsies. Like it's a condition.
it's just what they're born with.
Right.
It's genetic. It's in like their family lines. They are born that way. They can eat regular food, but it doesn't satiate them. Speaking of appetites, taboo appetites, it doesn't satiate them in the same way. What is particularly interesting about Bones and All to me is the interracial dynamics of it. So the main character, I am totally blanking on her name right now, but it's like the character's name, but Taylor Russell is the actress. She is a biracial black girl. Her mother is gone. She's raised by her black father, who abandons her on her 18th birthday. And when she goes out into the world, she comes upon an older white man who is also, they call them eaters, they don't refer to each other as cannibals, but who sort of teaches her how to follow her nose, how to act on instinct, how to be what she is. But he is sort of horrifying to her. He represents all of the adults in the story at large, represents a particular future that the two lovers are looking at and are filled with despair, because none of these options are options that are happy endings, right? And so this becomes the crisis for them, is the tension of their appetite, managing their appetite, and being who and what they are, how to hold the tensions of that together. There's a scene, and ruin it a little bit.
Sorry, spoilers.
Does anyone?
Is that okay? Spoilers? Okay.
So the road trip is about finding her mother. The road trip is about finding the main character's mother, and they eventually track her down in a mental institution where she has gnawed off both of her arms. She is a fascinating representation of Saturn devouring the sun. Is everyone familiar? The white mother who is hell-bent on devouring her black child. There's so much history in that. There's so, if you want to go down the road of the intersections of cannibalism and slave culture, and you're going to find some horrifying shit.
Censored.
Excuse my language. Yeah, so all of these tensions are sort of inscripted in the film, and it becomes, this how do you define who you are, separate from what you come from, and separate from the sort of pathways that are predetermined for you.
Yeah, and when I help students, that is what some of the things I talk about with my students. I have a student right now who is born into gang violence. So how do I help her move out of it when her immediate reaction is always fight? Fight, 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 fight. I'll go to jail. I don't care. I'll go to jail. So helping students, helping kids, helping people, helping your community, helping your friends, some of these things are very useful in helping when talking about it. When we look at what is instinct, how do we control these, what are some of these challenges that people face, because we're just human in that sense, right? So my last question is, I've got a couple professors here on the panel. How do you use these beastly narratives in the classroom? John?
So I do like a lot of work around, just folk tales and things of that nature in the class. I definitely use like a lot of media. So I teach a course called Afrofuturism and visual culture of horror. Students call it the Get Out class.
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
so
yes.
basically it's like, we look at like black horror and we look at like representations of horror from various standpoints and really dial into the different subgenres of horror. One, of course, is folk horror, And, so basically what I do is try to like just make sure that they have a spectrum, a diet of different types of horror,
Speaking of devour.
Yeah, so Devour, in particular, this is from my graphic, my imprint as well, and it was dealing directly with, you guys familiar with Anansi the spider? Anansi the spider is a storytelling guy from Ghana. And a lot of times, he's a trickster character, but he's also a god, so he's a man and a spider simultaneously. You talk about another Spider-Man, right?
A different Spider-Man, that's right.
Also trans.
Yeah, there's like Anansi.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
I didn't know that.
Anansi, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and actually is also probably a rabbit too, right? But okay, you know what? I'm gonna stop. Anyway, so the trickster shape shifts. But one of the things I was interested in was that he collects stories, that they collect stories. Right? And so I came with this idea that I was inspired with American Gods and Orlando Jones' portrayal of Anansi, and this notion that Anansi comes over with the slaves and he's collecting their sorrow and their pain and their stories because he wants to alleviate the suffering of the slaves that he came over with. But what happens is it's too much, and it drives him insane, and he becomes addicted to the pain that they're suffering. And so now he's sucking out too much. Now he wants to be, he can't be sated, right? And so this collection of like matrilineal like conjure women, they create like a prison for him. And whisper to him stories to keep him from breaking out.
Satiated, right?
Eating all the way, satiated.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is some burglars break into the prison thinking it's just a house, and it goes real sideways. That way. Yeah. So anyway, but it's all about like metaphors of like how these stories constantly encroach on what we call modern space.
Yeah. And Alex, speaking the other Spider-Man on the other side, how do you use Spider-Man in the classroom?
Not just Spider-Man, I'll run and just say with fiction, fiction provides us understanding into ourselves and understanding into others. And some of the beauty of our stories is that it can enable us to be in someone else's life that we have never lived. It's part of why it is so incredibly necessary to have diversity in terms of stories and diversity in terms of storytellers, because when you get the exact same types of stories happening over and over and over and over, this doesn't help broaden anybody's intellect, it doesn't help broaden our experiences. And so I think the importance of fiction in education and fiction for humanity is that commiseration and connection that it provides us with other people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm so sorry we didn't have room for questions, but if you're interested and have any questions for us, we'll be out in the hallway. Here are some of our ways you can find us. I have another panel tonight at 9 o'clock about Inside the Mind of the Penguin. We'll be talking about the penguin and Sophia Gigante. Yes, please take a picture. That is Abrams. Megascope is with John Jennings. The Other Stories is with Mary, if you want to wave real quick. That is her podcast. Ghost in the Maze, you can get that on Amazon now. As you can see, Spider-Man Psychology, and Fangoria. Leah is a writer for that. And of course, Davina, Lynn Pacificars has one of her characters out that will be coming out at San Diego WonderCon. So thank you so much again for your time. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them out in the hallways. So thank you again, WonderCon.